Yes, it's me. I'm back. Welcome to the podcast, Crypto Podcast with me, Coach 23, where we talk about pop culture, pro wrestling, and life in general. So it's randomly entrance now. So it's Sunday, and it's Sunday night. Sorry if weren't able to do a show for the NXT AEW show, Friday Night SmackDown. I find those shows quite, not really that interesting. They're more on storyline building. That's why I forgo it. So right now we're going to do an episode this Sunday for like more on random news. Is that my hair? Yeah, my hair is wavy. So yeah. So we're going to talk what happened this week in pro wrestling in general. This is quite a lecture or some because it's really highs and lows if you ask me of what's happening in pro wrestling right now, WWE, AEW, whatnot. So let's go with the highs first. So it was announced before this weekend that WWE and TNA are signing a deal or contract to be a partner company for a multi-year contract. So I know they already did the Royal Rumble, uh, TNA crossover when Jordan Grace back then last year, and even years before that was Mickey James when Mickey James was the knockouts champion. But that's more of like a one-time deal. But this time, I believe they're partnering with NXT more. This is quite a high for both companies, and um, I think right now they're trying to focus more on NXT and TNA on that crossover or not really Forbidden Door. It's a different company, but it's more on uh, a portal. And here's my co-host again, and that's Shadwick. Don't press the keyboards. Go there. Eat. No, no, no. Then yeah. So right now, it's a good partnership for both. Most of the stars in DNA are established in some areas. Some of them are established in TNA. Some of them are up and comers. And for example, their world champion now is Nick Nemeth, formerly known as Dolph Ziggler in WWE. Um, of course, Joe Hendry, the number one contender for the world championship in TNA, already made headlines last year, even challenging for the NXT championship against Ethan Page, I believe. Jordan Grace, multiple appearances. Alex Hammerstone. So it's quite a big deal for both shows or both companies, and who knows, you might see guys like a Josh Alexander doing a crossover or even signing with WWE finally. I am a surely blue mark for that, as I am a huge fan of Josh Alexander. I think he's one of the best technical wrestler out there. Uh, his intensity is quite similar with a Kurt Angle even. So I can't wait for those crossover. It will elevate TNA more in terms of mainstream casual fans. They're trying to do that. I believe they're trying to get that recognition that they had like what 15 years ago or so when they were still in the Spike TV network or Viacom networks when they replaced WWE in the Viacom networks. So it's really a huge appeal for them to include there. So I believe the worlds collide thing with TNA and NXT will happen even at this Sunday, tomorrow I believe in Genesis, because they already like TNA Genesis. Then there's the NXT logo below. So it's quite really an interesting thing for this one, and I really can't wait for the crossover. Imagine Ova Femi against Moose. Ethan Page against Josh Alexander. Both are previous teammates back then. Uh, the Hardy Boys, of course, who are currently the tag team champions in TNA, doing a crossover appeal, whether not just in NXT, but in Raw or SmackDown, and even giving them the Hall of Fame recognition if they needed to or they wanted to. So the sky is the limit. And like I said back then, I believe I said this in a few episodes or even like in chat rooms before that, WWE didn't really monopolize wrestling when they bought WCW and they bought ECW from a bankruptcy court because TNA was still there, New Japan is still there, Ring of Honor was still there. Although those other companies are not really part in like mainstream networks, except for TNA when they were in the Viacom or CBS or CBS networks, so yeah, like Spike TV. But you can't really say that they monopolize everything. It's still there. Uh, it never waned. My co-host is trying to enter the room, and they're stopping him. It's okay though, but yeah, like I said, this is an organic podcast. I don't have a room. This is my room. This is actually our bedroom. Um, but yeah, the appeal is there. It's not a monopolization. I mean, if AEW can do it with CMLL or New Japan Pro Wrestling, GCW and other companies, why not WWE and TNA? Heck, tell me like 15 years ago that this thing will happen, I will tell you you're crazy. But back then, it doesn't really it wasn't really that appealing to me even 15 years ago because most of the wrestler in 2005, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, most of the top stars in TNA were former WWE talents. Your Kevin Nash, your Stings, or Booker T, Kurt Angle, Christian Cage. And then afterwards, it was like the Dudleys or Team 3D, Bully Ray, but Devon Dudley, Ken Anderson, or formerly known as Ken Kennedy. So it wasn't really that appealing. But right now, the only WWE talents back then, or right now in TNA, back then from WWE, or like Nick Nemeth, Hardy Boys, Mickey James, even Gail Kim, if Gail Kim was still there. And most of the stars in people are the negative things about the internet wrestling community are like, oh, congratulations TNA, you're just a developmental league. No, what NXT or WWE is doing right now with TNA is they're helping them up. And why are people? It's like the same people who are saying that AEW is helping New Japan Pro Wrestling in terms of mainstream wrestling here in not here in the Philippines but there in the U.S. So there's no. It's really like more on being tag teams. And heck, WWE is actually having like not a signed contract, but like a handshake deal with Pro Wrestling Nova. How many times does WWE? They did it like 2 or 3 times now. With AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura earlier this year. Last year was Io Sky, I believe, and Kairi Sane. So WWE, or this is the vision of probably be mostly the vision of Paul Levesque, having that extended olive branch to other wrestling companies, and I'm all for it. Really, right now it's WWE or slash NXT partnership with TNA. I am excited. Really, sky's the limit for both companies right now. Um, so yeah, it's actually a good thing for the wrestling business and even wrestling fans in general. So yeah, so we have a three-story week right now. So for the second story, as you can see, the picture of the gentleman above the WWE and TNA wrestling logo, Corey Graves. So, timeline for this Corey Graves started. I believe he's really frustrated because last Monday he tweeted that he. It's really more of a paraphrase, not really a quote unquote. So paraphrasing, he's being demoted from the Raw team, main roster team to NXT TV and the CW. Then afterwards, there's one of the quote that he tweeted there that he wasn't. one of the higher ups, he didn't really say who was it, um, said that he wasn't really famous enough to be part of the Raw team in Netflix. So, what's my take on this? I'm a wrestling fan through and through. I've seen, the worst in announcers, best in announcers. Um, Announcers in WWE or in pro wrestling in general are the unsung heroes. Yeah, sure. You have the wrestlers in the ring. You have the referees, as they call the third man. Sixth man are like they call the fans as the sixth man. But announcers really, your Jim Rosses, Jerry the King Lawlers, Michael Coles, Booker T's, Taz, Excalibur's in AEW, whoever, Tony Schiavone, Corey Graves, Wade Barrett, Joe Tessitore. They're the unsung heroes because they're the one who's telling the story that what the wrestlers are doing in the ring, even with side notes, telling them historical values and whatnot. Um, the thing is, it happened last September, October when everything in the announcer teams were being announced. Raw moving to Netflix earlier this year. So even then, Michael Cole said that he and Pat McAfee will be the one will be calling Raw. Sorry, Joe Tessitore and Wade Barrett will be calling SmackDown. They didn't really announce where Corey Graves is included in that part. Here's the thing: I like Corey Graves. Um, I think it's great. They even tried before Joe Tessitore joined WWE. They tried even putting him in SmackDown as the play-by-play announcer, which is, in terms or wrestling parlance, he's the good guy announcer. Wade Barrett is like the heel guy, the heel announcer, or even the analyst. Um, when Corey Graves joined the announcers, the Raw and not really Raw, WWE announcers, like 10 years, a decade ago, because he suffered from like massive concussions. If you ask, like, I have like a few wrestling fans, friends, most of them didn't really like Corey Graves. They find him like arrogant, self-centered. Uh, I don't know, but for me, I like Corey Graves. I really, really do. I think he's a great, great announcer. He's a great partner with Michael Cole. Even maybe it's the way he looks. Like here, he looks really, but that's him. That's his personality or wrestling character. The most famous part, we don't really know how it happened. But if you're, a wrestling fan, if you're an open-minded person, most of you will think that, yeah, I understand because most even the wrestling public, the wrestling fans, even they're siding with Corey Graves because Corey Graves was hardworking. Corey Graves was, doing the job. Even he's a hardworking announcer. Yeah, I totally get it. I totally understand it as well. But what if that higher up who said that Corey Graves wasn't really famous enough was just joking? And at the time, Corey Graves was, woke up in the bad, side of the bed, the wrong side of the bed, and he wasn't really taking like a joke, really that, jokingly. He's really more of like, yeah, I am going to take this personally. Who knows? Because we only know what side of the story. And I right now I believe even that WWE will not answer this in publicly or even in social media the way Corey Graves did it. Because it's a different time and age. Corey Graves could, go to like Lee Fitting or Paul Levesque or Nick Khan even and say, you know what? I'm the hardest working person here, and why won't you give me a chance to do this? He go and go and have done that instead of going to social media. Sure, 10 years, 20 years, 15 years. 25 years ago, when social media wasn't really part of the wrestling medium, there most wrestlers who leave, announcers who leave, they go and shoot promos, taking shots against WWE, TNA, or whatever program they're in when they don't like things instead of talking to management. The story about this, people are saying that it's a work, people are saying it's a shoot. We don't know. People are even saying that maybe they are setting up Pat McAfee versus Corey Graves at WrestleMania. I think they even teased that way back WrestleMania 38 even. Because there was like a time that Corey, I believe it's the Rumble, Royal Rumble back then, that Corey Graves was like talking trash against Pat McAfee. But it didn't happen in 38 because maybe probably Corey Graves wasn't cleared enough of these concussion injuries. The thing is, if this is a work, remember, Corey Graves is working for WWE. WWE is the machine. And it's the brand. It doesn't matter. Even if you're Cody Rhodes, even if you're Roman Reigns, the brand is WWE. You're just part of that brand. Is Corey Graves not famous compared to Pat McAfee? Arguably, sure. You can say that. Because Pat McAfee signed with ESPN, or even like his podcast is worth like $100 million now. Sure, there's an argument that Pat McAfee could be a little bit more popular than Corey Graves in mainstream media. I get it. Personally, I get it. I'm going to tell you quite story on my own, and even in other stories. So here's the first story. In my own, I'm not self-centered. It's like similarly. When I was working in the BPO industry initially, way back 2007, 2008, I really worked my ass off to be, because most contact centers are, you're in part of a team, whether you're 12 or 15 agents, contact center agents, call center agents back then, because I was working the collections in business at the time. I worked my tail off to be the best on my team, and not just on my team, but the entire account. And I was in the top 5, also the top 10 every time. I was exceeding expectations as a collector. I was that good. And because I was that good, I believe that my supervisor back then, I'm close to her, and she told me, you know what? I'm setting you up to be a team leader soon. And yes, I took that as face value. Well, I'm good enough to be a team leader. It's a similar story. It's not the famous thing, but it's being more on hard work. Until even my team leader, who has a clout, even the operations manager that I had back then has some clout, they weren't able to push the company to promote me as a team leader. The clients even. And the positive scripting that they used to me at back then was, you are too valuable to be a team leader. You should be taking phone calls, because your collections, if you're working in the BPO industry, collections and sales, those are the revenue getting type of accounts, because you're taking money from, getting money from your clients or customers. And I was too valuable. I took it as face value. But for me, I took it personally. If I was that good, promote me as a team leader. But they said you're too valuable to be a team leader, just take phone calls, because you're great in getting revenue. So I'm like, okay. So I can say that I know the value of hard work, and maybe that's what Corey Graves is, trying to say. I am a hardworking person. I should be deserving this. Or I earned it. But that's the thing. Personally, it's not what, if you're working for a company or corporation, it's not what you really think. It's what your bosses really think that matters at most of the times. 95%, 90% of the times, it's what your bosses think, not what you think. Because you're just part of that machine. Teddy Long said it best. Corey Graves is lucky enough to work for WWE. AEW fans are like salivating in the prospect that, oh, Corey Graves ain't WWE now. We can't wait to have him here in the AEW. And most AEW fans hate some things from the WWE. So, and my question at the time is, going to AEW will make Corey Graves famous? Really? No? Um, but my prediction here, if this is our, or not really, if this is a shoot, meaning in wrestling parlance, this is real, definitely Paul Levesque will be talking to Corey Graves. What's up? What do you really want? He will be asking him that. What makes you unhappy? How can I make things happy? Or how can I make you happy? Do you want this to turn into a program? Do you want a shoot turn to a work? Because WWE is good at doing that. It's been known. Case in point, go back 15 years ago with Matt Hardy, Lita, and Edge. It's actually a story for another show. But yeah, that's part of it. And another story, this is not mine. If you know the story of Steve Jobs created Apple with Steve Wozniak. He is the owner, he is the founder until they became a public company. So meaning investors came in, give money to the Apple, invested up money to Apple, and they didn't find Steve Jobs as a CEO material. They see him as Steve Jobs, the Apple employee or Apple founder, Apple, engineer, or idealist, marketing stuff. That's what they see him. They didn't even made him CEO until they bought Next or Next, the Steve Jobs company Next, and until Steve Jobs came back to Apple during the late mid 90s or late 90s. But back then, if the story of Steve Jobs, here's the story. He even owns the company. He even's like the majority shareholder, but he has to do projects for them, and the board of Apple didn't want him doing the Lisa project, which didn't really pan out. They pushed him in doing the Macintosh or Mac for some people right now. He made it work, and the Apple Apple board made priced them. So it's not that's a machine. That's the company, and it's the owner, even the most hard the hard that's I'm sorry, it's redundant. The hardest working person there, which is the owner or founder of Apple, and they push him up out of the company itself. So that's the thing. What I'm trying to say, I'm not saying that a person doesn't matter if you're working in a corporation or company. Of course you matter, because if you think you're the lifeblood, or being energy or excitement to your company, it's a great mindset. But of course, at the end of the day, it's your bosses. At the end of your day, it's the machine, it's the brand, it's the company itself who really thinks what's your position in the company or whatnot. Like I said, I hope that this thing with Core Graves is just really, a shoot that will turn to work. Because I believe Core Graves is a talented individual, whether he's an announcer or as a wrestler, because I saw his work back then. And I think he's also a great wrestler, a good wrestler, but that got short because of injuries. So that's my take about it, about the Corey Graves situation. And like I said, more stories to come in the next few days, even about this one. So let's end the things in a high note. So what you're seeing in the third part of this episode is Pro Wrestling Illustrated PWI Awards for 2004. And most probably you're thinking like, this Coach 23 guy is a poser. He doesn't really know the history of wrestling. 41 years old, turning 42 this week. And here's just one part of my wrestling magazine collections. So This is a magazine from May 2013, so that's roughly 12 years ago. And it's The Rock winning his last WWE championship at the time. I have tons of my magazines: Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Inside Wrestling, the Wrestler magazines, WWE magazines, Raw, SmackDown magazines. I have a lot underneath this bed, and this is just one of it. I just saw it and I like to read it at the time. So I know my wrestling history, you people. So yeah, Pro Wrestling Awards just came out. This is not my phone, so I'm going to tell you guys who are the winners for the awards for PWI. When people say PWI still matters, yes. Right now there are the type of magazine that are really that both breaking kayfabe and not. They are still doing the stories of not kayfabe, and they're still doing of kayfabe stories. So yeah. So for their awards, let's go with the highest award, Wrestler of the Year. Of course, the winner is Cody Rhodes, with runner-up Gunther, Will Ospreay, and Bryan Danielson. Congratulations, Cody Rhodes. He's really the Wrestler of the Year last year. Woman of the Year is Toni Storm, followed by Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, and Jordan Grace of TNA. Tag Team of the Year, this is a surprising one. Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. The runner-ups are the Young Bucks, Fraction, that's Axiom and Nathan Frazier, and the Judgment Day, Finn Balor and JD McDonough. Match of the year last year, it's Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes, WrestleMania 49 2, followed up by CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, WWE Bad Blood. Second runner-up is Bryan Danielson versus Swerve Strickland. Third runner-up is Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay in AEW Dynasty. Most popular wrestler of the year last year, Cody Rhodes. Runner-ups are Jey Uso, Joe Henry, and Rhea Ripley. Most hated wrestler of the year, no surprise here, Dominic Mysterio, 44% of the votes. So runner-up are Solo Sikoa, MJF, and Logan Paul. Feud of the year, not surprisingly, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. Runner-ups are Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland, Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley, Mariah May versus Toni Storm. Faction of the year, The Bloodline, Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, Tongaloa, and Jacob Fatu. Runner-ups are the Wyatt Six, the Judgment Day, and the Death Riders. Wow, Death Riders are surprisingly part of that. Comeback of the year, Liv Morgan, followed up by Mercedes Monet, Randy Orton, and The Rock. Most Improved Wrestler of the Year, Mariah May, followed up by Nia Jax, Ova Femi, and Maxine Dupree. Should be Ova. Inspirational Wrestler of the Year, Cody Rhodes, Bryan Danielson, Sami Zayn, and Jeff Jarrett. Independent Wrestler of the Year, Mustafa Ali, Matt Cardona, Mance Warner, Ali Catch. Rookie of the Year, Kelani Jordan. Runner-ups are Jada Parker, Carmen Petrovich, and Oleg Bolton. And the Stanley Weston Lifetime Achievement Awards award winners are Booker T, Mickey James, Gail Kim. Really? Dave Meltzer? Really? He's the reason why they changed up the name of the Pro Pop and Wrestling podcast to the Podcast Scripter Show or Podcast Scripter Podcast because of Dave Meltzer. But yeah. So those are the winners for PWI. Congratulations to the winner. Um, so yeah, like I said, I know my wrestling history. I have tons of PWI magazines, WWE magazines still. I don't know what to do with them. I don't want to sell them. Probably in the near future when I take on mine. I want to give it away as a raffle to those random wrestling fans. If you're a subscriber to this, if I hit 100 subscriber this year, I will probably do that. I'll do a random, selection of who will get this magazine or not. Yeah. So share this video, share this channel, share this, show to your friends, your fellow wrestling fans, and trust me, who knows? You might get this PWI Rock magazine. which will be valued so much next year in the next few years. It's in good condition. It's a readable condition. Of course, they're like yellowish or not really tears, but more like this corner, but still a readable magazine. It's worth to read. I mean, the pages are still good, are still intact. Kevin's team. Yes, that's Kevin Owens. His name was Kevin's team. Yeah. Scales Thin Kill is like a similar with the Rise Above Hate t-shirt. Eat my dust, posers. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully you will enjoy the show. Like I said, spread the words. Spread the word of the podcast, Grifter Podcast with Coach 23. We're here. We talk about pro wrestling, pop culture, and life in general. Yeah. See you guys. Probably tomorrow or probably Tuesday for the Monday right Raw review. But yeah, have a great weekend. Have a great Sunday. Good night. Good morning to some. And talk to you soon.